There are many forest school programmes, some which have spanned over several years. But can you guess how many of those programmes started off thinking that they were going to be long term? 0! Hi, I'm Lou, and every single forest school group that I've worked with, I've had to prove that the forest school process works. It always starts off with a short-term pilot project, have to do some sort of evaluation, and then people go, wow, that's really cool, and invest in it. So I want to share with you 5 steps to gaining support for your forest school program using action research. If this is a topic that you'd like to dive more deeply into, then I'm offering a free online live lecture with me called Evaluate to Advocate. You can register for free through my Buy Me a Coffee page. I'll pop the link in the description below. Also, just before we get started, sorry about the sound quality. My camera has broken and it's a bit windy today, so I'm hiding in a blackthorn thicket to try and minimise the sound. But I'm going to have to save up for a new camera. So there we go. If you want to help me save up, do buy me a coffee. I'll pop the link in the description below. So let's get into these 5 steps. They're all based on the scientific method. Also, just a little side note, I am not an academic, so we're not talking here about really sort of thorough, in-depth, peer-reviewed scientific research. What we're talking about is practitioners' own records, evaluations and observations when you're running a forest school program, so you're answering your own questions. So let's get into it. Step 1 is hypothesis, or basically, what are you going to research? You need a question to investigate. Now, I found the most useful questions to investigate are the ones that your stakeholders, your decision makers, your managers, your head teachers, your governors, your funders have a bit of interest in. And so you might want to put yourself in the mind of those people and think about what matters to them. Because the wonderful thing about forest school is it supports holistic development. It supports self-esteem, emotional regulation, and that ripples out into lots of other areas. So it's very easy in many ways to find something that forest school will have an impact on, because it is such a holistic program. But you have to focus in on the things that matter most to those decision makers. I will give you an example. So I was working at a school and I was lucky enough to do whatever I wanted with my class, which was the younger children, but the Key Stage 2 children weren't allowed to come out to forest school. And the reason being was, well, they were worried because their last Ofsted was pretty dicey. They'd been, kind of told that they need to improve. The head teacher was naturally worried, well, how can I justify letting the Key Stage 2 kids go out for half a day a week when, there's SATs to prepare for and all the other curriculum based stuff that is crammed into the timetable of a mainstream school. So I picked the question, the hypothesis, that forest school experiences would improve writing scores, because I knew that was a weak area on the last Ofsted report, so that when Ofsted comes in next, it was going to be something they would definitely be looking at. And I believed that first-hand real-life experience is going to ripple out into literacy work and make people better at writing because they've got first-hand real-life experiences. Step 2 is your method. How are you going to test your hypothesis? How are you going to test the question? And that could be done in various different ways. It very much depends on what the question is that you're answering. So you might compare and contrast data sort of before and after, for example, in your method. You might look at observations, you might send out questionnaires, you might want to think about the method and how it's going to be gathering the data and what sort of data you want to collect. Generally speaking, there are 2 different types of data. There's quantitative, which numerical, or there's qualitative, which is more, I guess, verbal, language-based, descriptive. And you might want to pick one or the other, or you might want to collect both. So you need to create a method that's going to be able to do that. To continue my example, what I did with these Key Stage 2 children is I managed to persuade the head teacher to let them come out to Forest School for a morning. It wasn't a proper Forest School experience. Obviously, one morning in the woods doesn't make Forest School, but it was a starting place. And we did sort of, as close to Forest School as we could get in a morning. And they did lots of sort of play-based things and choices. And then they were asked to do a piece of literacy work, a piece of writing, a non-fiction piece of writing. About something they did at Forest School. So some of them chose to write instructions for how to make a bow and arrow, and some of them wrote newspaper articles about their experience in the wood, and some of them did a recount, so they kind of could choose what type of writing they did. And then we very simply compared the score of that piece of writing. It was scored by their normal class teacher against their last piece of non-fiction writing. So it was a compare and contrast kind of method. We also did send back some questionnaires to both the children and to their supporting adults who had come out at Forest School as well, about what they had observed the learners doing outside and whether it was different than the classroom. So again, sort of comparing and contrasting, but in a more qualitative method. So we, in that example, gathered both. We had the numerical data of the scores on the pieces of the writing, and we had the qualitative results from the questionnaires. Step 3 is results. So once you've done your method and you've gathered this data, you've got to look at it and see kind of, what's it saying. So that could be done in a variety of different ways. It could be done in just tables. It could be done through graphs, pie charts, bar graphs, the normal kind of statistical kind of processes that you could use. Thinking about how you want to present it if other people are like looking at your action research. So try to make it, I guess, as easy to understand the results as possible. You might also in your results want to include examples, quotes, particularly if you've gathered qualitative information. So you might want to take direct quotes from the children or from the parents or whoever you've been talking to. You might want to use images. You might want to use example pieces of work. So in terms of what we did for this Key Stage 2 writing exercise is we did present the data of their writing scores in a table, like the writing before and the writing after, and then we looked at the difference between those two scores for each pupil, and then we kind of calculated an average based on that class cohort. And yay, my hypothesis was correct, because their writing went up by a sub-level. Although, of course, this is not completely formal, scientifically based research, because it's very difficult to pinpoint a change on one particular parameter. So there are still very much limitations to the study. So that also needs to be recognised when you're doing your action research. It's like highlight the limitations and other factors that might come into play to create those same results. So it's about trying to be honest, really. But I still believe that first-hand experience helps people's writing and inspires them. Step 4 is evaluate. So once you've got your results, what do they mean? So it's about interpreting them and kind of maybe giving suggestions or reasonings behind what you're seeing in the results. So when you're looking at the results, you want to look for patterns, you want to look for trends, and think about why Forest School might have created that pattern or that trend. Also, if there are exceptions, if there's one particular child where nothing changed for them, maybe it's worth also speculating about that as well. So it's kind of like analysing the data that you've collected and kind of trying to explain what this means and how that will support people moving forward. Step 5 is communication, which actually perhaps is the most important one if you're trying to gain support. So now you've done your action research, you've got this data and you've interpreted it, how are you going to share it with the people that you want to gain support from? So you might want to produce a report. That's what I did with the Key Stage 2 writing project. I put it all in like a little report, a little evaluative report, and then when Ofsted came round and said, well, how can you justify that everybody's outside half a day a week? We could go, here's our piece of action research. And she went, thank you very much, that's all I need to know. Because she was just concerned that we had thought about why we were doing the things that we were doing. So you want to present your information in whatever is the most user-friendly way possible, and that's going to depend on the audience. So it could be a written report, it could be doing some sort of like presentation, either live or online. It could be having bits and pieces on your website, in your newsletters, all different ways of kind of communicating it. But make sure you do communicate it, because that's how you gain support for your forest school, is showing people, look, it's great, it does this, this is what it's doing for these children, so please invest in it and let us continue it. So there you go, evaluate to advocate. 5 steps to gaining support for your forest school using action research. Do you have any other tips that you use to get support? Do let me know in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this video, do give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel so you can join us in the woods or the thicket next time. And thanks for watching. And don't forget, join me live for my live lecture, Evaluate to Advocate. Link in the description below. Bye. Justifying time to do forest score has got to be more than it's just cool. Action research is what you need so you can gain support and head to the tree